A very good morning to all the students. I hope every one of you is in your best health and doing well. So, we were doing chapter number 9 of our biology section, that is heredity and evolution. And evolution is not part of your syllabus for this year of class 10th. I have told you in the previous lecture also. So, we will be just studying about heredity. And in our previous lecture, we have read about what the term heredity means. It's just the transmissions of characters from parents to their offsprings or transfer of the traits. Now, traits are that distinguishing quality or any character which are typically found in a person. So, when that character transfers to the offsprings, that is called as heredity. So, in this chapter, we have to study about Mendel's inheritance, in which he used pea plant to find the difference and he crossed. So before we study that experiment, we have to study about few terminology which will be used in this chapter. So today in this lecture, we will be learning about those terms. Okay, so let's start with that. So the first thing, I hope everybody of you know that chromosomes are a very important thing in any person or in any individual, because they provides the characteristics information of any person. Okay, so we'll start with the chromosomes. Okay, so we have studied in our previous classes also. I hope you all remember what are chromosomes about. So chromosomes are a thread-like structure. They are present in the nucleus. So before I write the definition, let's see here. In your class 9th, you have studied about cell. Okay, so it's a cell membrane. So inside the cell there is a nucleus. So nucleus is a controlling unit. You all know that. Here we are not studying about cells, so I'm not drawing any other cell organelles in this. I'm just talking about the nucleus. So this is a nucleus. So in the nucleus is made up of nucleus membrane, which is porous. So here is a nuclear membrane. It has some pores in it, and it has ER also. So here there are some dense substance which is called as nucleolus, and along with the nucleolus it is filled with the nucleoplasm. In this there are some chromosomes. Okay, so chromosomes lies inside the nucleus. So for the human beings we have 23 pair of chromosomes, that is 46 in number. So I'm not drawing all those chromosomes here. So chromosomes are what? They are just condensed chromatin fiber, and it's like this kind of a shape, somewhat like this. Okay, so now what happens is that chromosomes are thread-like structure because they are so condensed, they are so super coiled. So if they are so coiled like this, the coiling is somewhat like this. So because they are condensed form, but when there is crossing over and then it opens up. So suppose this is a chromosome here. So chromosomes is in the cell which is found in the nucleus, which is formed by DNA. Now the term DNA comes here in this. Firstly, I would like you to tell that we have learned about DNA. I just gave you a little introduction in class 9 about DNA. So DNA is a double helical structure. Okay, deoxyribonucleic acid. So it's a double helical structure. So this chromosome, this is supercoiled. So it is made up of a DNA. So this is a DNA, because this chromosome is made up of DNA, which has genes in it. Now this DNA and DNA, this is a DNA, like DNA have some base pair. So they have adenine, thymine, guanine and cytosine. So adenine always pair with thymine and guanine always pair with cytosine. And in plants it's uracil. So there is a coding like this, pairing like this, and in this there are 10 base pair in every helical disc. Now this DNA is functional, but the characteristics which we are talking about, that a specific color of eye, hair color, height and all, that is present, that is the information which is present in the DNA in the form of genes. Okay, so genes are there. So DNA has a segment which is the gene of that is the functional portion which have the perfect characteristics. They are called as genes. So genes are the part of that DNA which have the proper characteristics. Like I am having a lot of DNA in my body. You also have a lot of DNA in your body. But if we have certain characteristics in our body, that is because of these genes. So these genes makes RNA, because ribonucleic acid, and then RNA will make protein. Okay, so protein is made. Now I'll concise all this like this. Example, if a person is having black hair, okay, he's having black hair, so that means his RNA are sending the message to the cell organelles that make protein which has black color. Okay, like if the animals are having tough skin, so their RNA are sending message to the cell organelles to make protein which are very tough, which have tough thing, because that all the things are done in the cell itself. Ribosomes will make protein, so they will instruct the other cell organelles to make that kind of a thing which is useful to that human being. So gene are responsible for the characteristics, because gene will make the RNA, and then RNA will finally make the protein, and that protein is responsible for the appearance, for the characteristics which we're talking about, the traits of that person, of that animal, and so on. So the nucleus has chromosomes. Chromosomes are made up of a DNA, and DNA has genes in it. So we can write that chromosomes are thread-like structure in the nucleus of a cell formed of DNA which carries genes. So a thread-like structure in the nucleus of a cell formed of DNA which carries genes. Okay, so now these genes are the unit of DNA on a chromosomes which governs the synthesis of one protein that controls a specific characteristics or traits of an organism. Now, because these genes, like this DNA, they have a specific unit of DNA. Suppose we are having a different like human beings have different kind of body and animals have different kind of body. So how it happens like that? All the offsprings of human beings are born alike, and offspring of monkey are born alike. Monkeys have hair on their body, they have a scaly skin, but human beings do not have that much of hair in their body, and they don't have a soft skin. So that depends upon the genes, because all the human beings somehow share the same genes. Now if we'll talk about the community, so in the community, if you'll see, a certain community will have a very long height, specific, like the Pahadi people have a sharp features, and then the Tibetan people have different kind of features. So because they have that genes in them, so those genes will tell the will make RNA, and then RNA will form protein, and that proteins will be responsible to have those things, those features in them. Okay, so genes are the actual heredity units, because genes are the main thing which are responsible for the characteristics or the traits which transfers from parents to the offspring. So they are the unit of heredity. Like we say na, that chromosomes have the information of an individual, so those information are in the genes. So because DNA also have the information, but the part of that information of a person is in the genes. So when we say that we will match the DNA, so the gene is matched. So if the gene is that gene of interest is taken, like if you want to have a characteristics of that person, example, I like the taste of apple, but I don't like the texture of apple, so I want a soft and spongy apple like tomato. So we will take the gene of interest from that tomato, which is that characteristic, that trait which is responsible for the juiciness or the sponginess of tomato, and then it will be mixed. That hardness of the apple will, that gene which is responsible for that, be taken out, and then that is a long process of recombinant DNA technology in which vector is taken. So but here gene is the main actual unit of heredity which transfers the characteristics of or the traits from parents to their offspring. So there is a unit of heredity which transfer characteristics actually or traits from parents to their offsprings. During the reproduction, because when there will be reproduction, then only the genes will be transferred from one cell to the other cell. Okay, so these genes were used because genes work in the pairs, so the heredity or genes are responsible for controlling the same characteristics of an organism, and they can be of two types actually. That is, one is so gene can be of two types. One is dominant gene, okay, gene, and the other one is recessive gene. Now the name defines the dominant gene is that the gene which decides the appearance of an organism. Okay, so even in the presence of an alternative gene is known as the dominant gene. The gene which decides the appearance of an organism even in the presence of an alternative gene. Like always two genes will be present, like if because they are two parents, when offspring is born, so both the parents will be having their characteristics, like one parent is having blue eyes and the other parent is having black eyes. So baby is likely to have either blue eyes or black eyes. So if a baby has blue eyes, that means the dominant gene were of blue eyes, blue color, and if baby has black eyes, that means the dominant gene were of black color. So the color which is not in the baby is recessive gene. The other gene which is not able to give its characteristics to the person is known as the recessive gene. So the gene which decides the appearance of an organism even in the presence of the alternative genes is called as dominant gene. It will dominate. Okay, so now recessive gene is that gene which can decide the appearance of an organism only in the presence of another identical gene is called as a recessive gene. Now if there are two genes, but the recessive gene is is no more active. So the gene which can decide the appearance of an organism only in the presence of another identical gene is called as recessive gene. That means this recessive gene will only be present, or it will decide the appearance of an organism only when the other gene which will be present will be its identical. Now, for example, the dominant gene is represented by the capital letter. Okay, capital letter. For example, if we are talking about a pea plant, because here in this chapter we will be reading about Mendel's experiment and it was on the pea plant. So for the capital letter it is written as T, like this, T. Okay, so and for the recessive gene it is written as a small letter, small t. Okay, so if there will be capital T, that means it's a dominant gene, and small t means a recessive gene. So because we have just read here, dominant genes are those genes which dominates the recessive gene, like it will dominate. I think you know the meaning of dominate, that it will be more these characteristics will be more visible, so it will suppress this gene, so it's called as recessive gene. So dominant gene will dominate the recessive gene for the same character on the other chromosomes of the pair. Like if you're talking about the color, so color is a character here. So color character, it's a blue color or a black color. So now if the blue will be having dominant gene, so then the blue color will dominate the black color. Okay, but actually the black color is more dominant. Okay, now so we will, after this we will be studying the next is genotype. So this genotype means genotype, phenotype. So first genotype. Now it is a genetic constitution of an organism. It shows a genetic constitution. These terms will not be asked to you in the exams, but you should know when you learn this. Otherwise I will be using these terms and you will be confused. So genotype is the genetic constitution of an organism which describes the gene which is description of a genetic constitution of an organism, or which is a description of genes present in an organism. Okay, so we always pair genotype because it is a constitution of an organism, so it is a description of genes present in the organism. Like if we pair, it is always be done like this, T or T. Okay, or T or small t, or this, always like this, where this T is it stands for the dominant gene and this is the recessive gene here. So a tall plant, for example, a plant is tall, so the genotype of a tall plant will be always TT, because when it will be the dominant gene and dominant gene, both the gene will be dominant, so obviously the plant will be tall. or either it could be like this. So here also we can see this is a dominant gene and this is a recessive gene. So obviously a plant will be tall. So genotype of a tall plant is this. Okay, or a dwarf plant we'll talk about, or a dwarf plant is small t. So here, because we have read that a dominant gene is that gene which dominates the recessive gene, but the recessive gene is always when it decides the appearance of the other gene is also identical, then only it will be, the recessive gene will be take the thing, a plant will be dwarf, because these are both the recessive genes. So only in this case the plant will be dwarf. So this is the genotype. Now next is phenotype. Phenotype is the character or trait which are visible. So if we are seeing a plant is a tall or dwarf, so that is the phenotype. So genotype is this character is constitution or description of genes, and phenotype is what we see. So it is the characteristics of or traits which is visible in an organism. Okay, so genotype is the this constitution which is, it is description of genes which are present in the organisms, and phenotype is what we see, like example, a tall or a dwarf plant. Okay, so this is, next is first learn this word progeny. So progeny is nothing but the offsprings. Whenever the term comes progeny, don't get confused, it means two offsprings, like babies of parents. So there you will be hearing terms called F1 generation and F2 generation. So F1 generation is nothing but the first generation, like there are Dada and Dadi. Okay, so they produce your father. So father is F1 generation, and then your father and your mother had you. So you are the F2 generation. Okay, that means that when two parents crosses, or when two parents produces the offsprings or the progeny, then their progeny is called as the first generation or first filial generation, which is called as F1 generation. And when that F1 generation produces progeny, so they produces the second generation, which is called as the second filial generation, that is F2 generation. Okay, so this is the terms which is very important for you to know, because these will be using genotype, phenotype, progeny, F1 generation, F2 generation, dominant genes, recessive genes. So you should know all these. So please study these all so that we can move to the main part of the chapter, which we'll be doing from our next video. So till then, do all the question and answers and take care. Thank you.